I've always had great problems in sleeping at night. Since I was a child, I remember my mother always found me awake in bed when she came to check on me before bedtime. And things haven't changed over time. Any kind of medical check has been worthless, but lack of sleep didn't create any problem in my life. I graduated, I found a job. I didn't get married, but this has not much to do with it. Anyway, things completely changed 7 months ago when I moved into a small country house, far away from the city and the chaos. A very quiet place, surrounded by greenery. Magically, and to my astonishment, I started making this long and good sleep, even 8 hours every night. It never happened to me before. I thought that changing environment and habits was enough to find peace, but something more unsettling came with sleep. Something that made me regret the sleepless night. I remember one morning, the sun up in a warm September day, the rays of the sun piercing through the big window across the garden, and in backlight, I noticed these human footprints on the floor. And that was very strange, since I live alone and those footprints should have been mine. But I never walk around barefoot in my house, so I put a foot on one of those prints, and it was a perfect match. I didn't feel relieved knowing that no one had broken into my house, and following the tracks, I noticed that they left from my bed and stopped in front of the basement door. The wooden staircase leading to the basement is very steep, and the poor lightning kept me from checking where those footprints ended and what really happened down there. Did I really start sleeping just to become a sleepwalker? That would have been a joke. I cleaned the floor, but when I checked again the day after at the same time, the footprints were still there, from my bed to the basement door. I was really starting to get scared since I didn't remember anything. Mine was a dreamless sleep, and I didn't have any clue about what I was doing at night. Besides, the ladder that leads to the basement is so steep and dangerous, it could have been a deadly trap for a semi-conscious man. I thought about locking the door, but I was too curious, or maybe it wasn't just that. I had to know if I went down into the basement at night and find out what I did over there. The basement was a narrow place with just some trunks, an old TV, and a prop table. So, that day, before going to sleep, I had an idea. I put some flour at the base of the stairs to solve the mystery. If I came down to the basement that night, not only would I see the footprints on the flour, but also, following the traces, I could have been able to figure out what I did down there. When I woke up the next morning, I didn't need to go down in the basement to understand that I spent part of the night there. My feet were covered in flour. But the most terrifying thing was that I saw slight but clearly visible traces at the base of the stairs, headed to the west wall. To be exact, a double set of footprints. In short, I came down to the basement, I headed toward the wall, and then I made the same path on my way back. The rest of the parquet was clean. I repeated the experiment the following day. It was upsetting to realize that every single night I did the exact same thing. I made my way to the wall, and then I came back. I stopped using flour since I had extra cleaning shifts that week, but I didn't do what I should have done since the beginning. I didn't lock the damn door. I was now aware of my path, but I had no idea about the length of my small trips. Did I just walk to the basement and then came back? How long did I stay in front of that wall? So, the following night, I decided to leave the laptop on the whole time. It was on my desk and I could record my sleep from the webcam. Or it's more like what should have been my sleep. The results were shocking. That night I got out of my bed at about 2:30. When I came back, it was 4:15. I've been there almost 2 hours. I thought it was impossible. Maybe that time I went somewhere else, so I did the same thing in the following nights. I realized that all my walks lasted about 2 hours. It could be a little more or less, but that was not the point. I thought I was going crazy, making experiment on myself, but I had to know. I simply had to know more, and there was just one last thing to do. I moved my laptop in the basement, in the spot where the TV was, and the night of September 21st, 2019, just before going to sleep, I start recording. The next morning, before opening that video, I spent a long time staring at the screen. I knew I would have watched it, but I was terrified by what I was going to watch. Me, staring at the wall, and what if I did something else? The first minutes showed me what I already knew. I felt puzzled and distressed, looking at me, in front of that wall, watching something I couldn't see. But the worst was yet to come. I fast-forward the recording since the show was quite disappointing, and suddenly a shiver ran down my spine when I saw my lips moving. I was clearly talking. I turned up the volume, but it wasn't enough to understand what I was saying, but I could hear my voice. It was as light as breath and softer than velvet, but at the same time, chilling. For a moment, it seemed like I wasn't hearing just my voice. But maybe it was a suggestion. Maybe. Suddenly, I saw my right hand starting to move towards the wall, very slowly, and in a few seconds it was touched by 5 fingers. My heart almost stopped, looking at me in that position for several minutes. I stared at that scene with my eyes wide open, terrified of what might have happened next. But nothing happened. Slowly, I took my hand off the wall, and I just went back. My picture disappeared from the screen, and I don't remember how long I stared at that last frame. A wall in a basement, the exact thing that have been done for several nights. I had no answer to my question, but I should have known. You might think that this story ends with a startling revelation. The call of a woman buried alive under the wall. A haunted house, or maybe Satan himself from the gates to hell. None of this, I'm sorry. The story ends with the closing of the basement door, because after those events, I lock it every night. No more walks for me, at least not in the basement. But sometimes, when I go down there, strictly with the daylight, I still used to watch that wall, asking myself what was hiding behind my night walks. What a nice wall, by the way. It's so smooth and perfectly polished. It's cold to the touch, but it exudes a special warmth. It looks like it's staring at me and talking to me. I could stay here, listening for hours.